Okay, let's do this. Let's take a look at all these 11 games and let's take a look at all these resorts and what has happened to the table after the end of this match week and heading into decision day. But before we actually get to that, I know somebody in the comments on my preview said that I forgot the Minnesota versus LA Galaxy game, and when I look at the video again, when I look back at it, I indeed forgot about it. And I know Galaxy fans are going to be even hating me even more now, the fact that I forgot their game. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you will also say that I forgot it on purpose so that I don't want the Galaxy to make the playoffs, which in some sense, yes, that's kind of true because, you know, anytime when you see Dom Kinnear lead a team, and especially leading your rival team to make it to the playoffs, it not only is very irritating, but it's kind of like a just insult to injury in terms of how bad the Quake season has been. But I didn't do that because the fact that I don't want the Galaxy to make the playoffs, it was just simply me just forgetting to put the game on the board and just leave a complete free space there when I should have just put Minnesota versus the Galaxy in my preview. And I think in the preview I even mentioned at point of that video that the Galaxy was actually off this week, which is probably one of the most stupid thing that I said in a video because they were not off. And so we're not Minnesota. The only team that was off this weekend was actually the New England Revolution. But either way, let's get into these games. And just like I previewed the Quakes versus Colorado game first in the preview because that game is probably the most meaningless game out of all 11 or 10 remaining game that is on the board, I'm going to do the same thing here too because let's face it, I know there's not a lot of people talk about this game or even watch this game, and I of course did watch this game because I was there for this match, but I'll just give a very quick overview for people that, you know, don't want me to just talk about this game extensively and focus on the other 10 games that actually matters. But basically in this game, it's a 0-0 draw between the Quakes and Colorado, and like I said in the match vlog, it's only fitting that when you have two garbage teams facing off each other, that it will just end in a 0-0 draw. And in this case, it was anything but an entertaining 0-0 draw. I mean, you had one team, which is the Rapids, just defend it for the whole game, just sit back and kind of camp in their own half so that they don't concede a goal and don't drop more points. And then you have the Quakes that pretty much just dominate for one of the few times this season against their opponent, and the only problem with that is that they just could not find a crucial final ball, and the amount of corners that we had and the amount of crosses we had was absolutely dreadful throughout this game. So there you have it. That is the result of why this game ended 0-0, and it certainly is a very disappointing result for both teams because I guess one team want to get a win to at least have something to cheer it about, and also the fact that Wando did not score in this game, which means he is not going to break the all-time goal scoring record at home this season. He might break it next season, but he's not going to break it at home, and I know a lot of people want him to break the record at Avaya Stadium rather than away. But yeah, either way, with that game out of the way, let's actually talk about some of the real games that actually matters in terms of the standings and also the playoff scenario. And we start with DC, who won 3-1 against NYC FC. Goals in this game, Rootney, Acosta, and David Villa with the consolation, Rootney with the brace in this game. And really, I don't really need to talk more about what has DC United done throughout the second half of the season because it feels like I'm just going to keep mentioning every single week. And, you know, usually when I mention something every single week, it's usually kind of like bad and I don't want to mention it again. But in this case, DC United, congratulations. You are now in the playoffs, and what you have done in the second half of the season has really just give a lot of people's attention to your team, and certainly have got my attention. I mean, at some point of the season, I was kind of almost rooting for DC United to win their games because of this incredible run that they've been on. And in this game, this game pretty much just summarized how their resurgence of the second half goes, with Rooney, of course, scoring the first goal after Lucho Acosta basically completely destroyed that NYC FC defense, and then he made a lovely assist to Rooney, and then Acosta himself scoring an absolute banger from 25 yards out. And if you thought the Rooney kind of banger in midweek was amazing, the Acosta banger was right up there as one of the best goals we have seen so far this season. And yeah, like I said, DC are now in the playoffs, and they actually leapfrog Columbus into that fifth spot, which I'll talk about in a couple of seconds of what Columbus did. And you would not believe what Columbus did and the situation that they are in right now. And as for NYCFC, well, yeah, this is bad. And I'm pretty sure a lot of NYCFC fans has been hitting the panic button ever since Dom Turin started to lose control of this team. And I just have a feeling that he is potentially going to get fired at the offseason. I mean, I just don't think Dom Turin, whatever his system that he's implemented to this team, it just clearly isn't working. And I will be very surprised if he continues to be the head coach of NYCFC heading into next season, mainly because they have really struggled ever since he took over. And the only reason why NYCFC is making the playoffs was because they were incredible in the first half of the season. If they did not have this incredible run, there would have been a huge possibility that NYCFC would be actually eliminated from the playoffs this season, and we would have probably had a very similar thing happening with what FC Dallas happened last season, with them leading for majority part of the first half and then completely collapse in the second half of the season. But thankfully for NYCFC, it did not happen. But that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be really concerning heading into the playoffs. I mean, when you look at this team, it's pretty clear that this team is going to be one and done again. And as I mentioned in the preseason, if they go one and done, it's a disastrous season for NYCFC. You would think this is finally the year that they can get it right, and they're just basically wasting the amount of time David Villa have left with this team. I mean, David Villa, he is getting close to that point where he just kind of run out of gas, and that he is gonna start to go in a rapid decline. I mean, next season I think he's 35 or something like that. So yeah. But meanwhile, moving on into the next match. So Montreal, believe it or not, they are actually not eliminated from the playoffs. So I know I said that Montreal, if they win this game and the fact that DC United also win the game, then they would be mathematically eliminated, which it was true for majority of this game until, like I said before, Columbus did something that nobody expected did. And again, I will mention that in a couple of minutes. But Montreal, of course, with a 2-0 win over TFC. Piatti, of course, with the brace to give them the 2 goals. They actually had a goal disallowed early in the game. I think it was in the 34th minute. And VAR actually got the call correctly, and this was one example of why VAR actually work in MLS, because when they look on the replay when the ball was delivered into the box, none other than former Quakes player Quincy Amarikwa ran offside, and yeah, that's why the goal was disallowed. Amarikwa actually didn't score the goal. He was actually flicked it back into the box. I actually forgot who exactly scored that goal that was disallowed in the 34th minute, but he was in an offside position, and it's a great call by the referee using VAR to call that goal back. But fortunately for Montreal, they eventually would get their goal with Piatti scoring the penalty. Zavaleta, what in the world was he doing, making just bad challenges in the box and conceding that penalty? And then, of course, they pretty much got all 3 points wrapped up with Piatti scoring in second. And again, TFC defends. And this time, Alex Bono, who pretty much has had a disastrous season with TFC this year. Well, this goal that he conceded pretty much just summarized his disastrous season. I mean, I don't know what in the world was he thinking, trying to come out way too early to get the ball. And Piatti basically just dunked it over his head and basically seal all 3 points for Montreal in this game. So, yeah, certainly it's a big victory for Montreal. And certainly they fight for another day. And certainly now heading into decision day, you know, they are going to be playing against the Revs away, which it might sound like an easy matchup, but it's not. It's going to be a little bit tricky too. I mean, I know the Revs are eliminated from the playoffs, but, you know, Montreal heading on the road against a Revs team that have been relatively good at home, it's definitely not going to be easy, and they have to win that game against the Revs. If they do not win, they're out of the playoff, no matter what Columbus has done. Speaking of Columbus, so what the hell, Columbus? How in the world did you lose this game to Orlando City? So Orlando City, who is a team that haven't won a game since July and have only won one time since May of this season. For those of you that want to keep track of how long that's been, that is almost 180 days or 150 days since they have got 2 victory this season. And yet, somehow, in some way, they find a way to beat Columbus in this game. And Columbus, my oh my, this was an absolute shit show from them. And probably is the worst performance that they have been produced this season. And I'm pretty sure Greg Berhalter will be absolutely fuming at his guys after this game. I mean, you know, Higuain did get the early goal for them, and at that point it looked like it was all rosy, and the fact that Columbus maybe somehow will get out of Orlando City with an ugly win. But no, instead the defense basically just self-destruct, concede 2 meaningless penalty. First it was Yoshi Tune that, or not Yoshi Otun, but he, of course, scored the penalty goal, but it was one of the Columbus defender basically decided to swat the ball away and did a kind of hand of God moment that caused the penalty, which, like I said, Yotun basically puts it away. And then in the 96th minute, just as you thought that Columbus, who, again, it was not a good performance whatsoever. It's been an ugly performance, but maybe they can get out of Orlando City with a point and with a 3-point lead over Montreal, and maybe they'll have some kind of breathing room heading into this decision day. Nope. Instead, Will Trapp had other idea. He decided to brought down Chris Mueller, who, by the way, Chris Mueller was on the ground when he trying to make the turn, and there was also 2 Columbus defender where Chris Mueller was, and yet somehow those 2 defenders does not get the ball away from Chris Mueller, who, like I said, he was off balance, and Will Trapp, of course, eventually tripped him, led to a penalty. Sacha Kljestan, excuse me, man, cannot speak for a minute there, but Sacha Kljestan eventually put that one away in the 96th minute, and yeah, Columbus, holy crap, why in the world did you lose to this game? And now, for the Crew, things just got a whole lot interesting for them. Because remember how the Crew throughout the season, I haven't mentioned the fact that they are in danger of missing the playoffs? Yeah, now there is probably that kind of thing that I have to say, because when you look at this team and heading into decision day, they have a 2-point gap over Montreal. And keep in mind, if Columbus drew their game against, who do they play? Oh, Minnesota, they play at home. So at least maybe the good news about Columbus is that they play at home next week and they play against a struggling Minnesota team. But if they drew that game against the Loons and Minnesota or Montreal get the 3 points against New England, then Columbus would be out of the playoffs because Columbus and Montreal would be tied on points, but Montreal would own the tiebreaker because they have more wins than Columbus. They have one more win than Columbus have this season. And yeah, I'll tell you what, if that actually happens, if Columbus does choke on decision day and not make the playoffs, this would be something that I think it's going to be not as bad as what FC Dallas did last season, which is just completely collapse in the second half of the season and not make the playoffs. But it would be right around the neighborhood of just a massive collapse. Like, seriously, how in the world does Columbus not able to make the playoffs when they're playing against two of the worst team in the league down the stretch? So, yeah, certainly for Crew fan, it is really nerve-wracking time for them, and they better hope that in that game against Minnesota, they can win that one so that they don't have to worry about these kind of complicated scenario. And certainly Montreal fans will be the biggest Loons fan in decision day, because that will also affect their result of whether or not if they made it to the playoffs or not. I mean, I thought for sure Montreal was going to get eliminated when I saw DC lost to them. Like, I was ready to make a moving forward series for Montreal until I realized Columbus are only 2 points ahead of Montreal, and that means that Montreal are mathematically still alive in the playoff hunt. But yeah, next up, and now from talking about the playoff hunt and the playoff situation in the Eastern Conference to now talking about Supporter Shield race, because these next two games will be relevant to the Supporter Shield race. So both team that is fighting out for the Supporter Shield this season won their game, and both of these teams actually won their game pretty ugly. I mean, Atlanta 2-1 win over Chicago. Fidel Escobar with the goal in the 9th minute, and then Kappenhoff with an own goal in the 26th minute. Deleu, of course, scored in the 24th minute to equalize for Chicago at that point. And like I said, Kappenhoff, of course, scored an own goal, and it was just one of the most weirdest kind of own goal, and probably an own goal that shouldn't have happened, because Kappenhoff and the Chicago goalkeeper had a miscommunication, and basically Kappenhoff was thinking that he could just like play the ball back to the Fire goalkeeper and that he can just easily catch it. But no, instead the Fire goalkeeper come rushing off his line, and then Kappenhoff basically knocked the ball right past the Fire goalkeeper. I mean, that is just one of the most hilarious own goal you will ever seen so far this season. But other than that, you know, there was no more goal scoring in this game, but there probably should have been, because Atlanta had so many opportunities to potentially put this game away. Joseph Martinez, how many times did he miss a one-on-one opportunity in this game? Is just incredible. I mean, and for Joseph Martinez, as much as he's having this record-breaking season and scoring the most goal ever in a single season by any MLS player, he is actually in a slump right now. Like, he has only scored 3 goals ever since he broke that record at Orlando City, or actually he only scored 2 goals ever since he broke that record at Orlando City. And you know, if you're coming into the playoffs and you are potentially relying on a guy that is going to score you the goals, but he's not producing, then that could be really a big problem. But I think overall, when you look at Atlanta, and I think maybe the biggest pieces that they miss in this game, besides Tito Villalba, who I also forgot that he was not playing in this game, but really the biggest piece that they're missing is Miguel Almiron. I mean, Almiron is basically the reason why Joseph Martinez scored all those goals, because he is the guy that have just assisted those goals. I mean, time and time again, we have seen Almiron and Martinez just pretty much on the same page. Almiron always plays a perfect ball to Joseph Martinez. Joseph Martinez basically put that one away. And now with Almiron not there to give him the ball to get him into good space to put the ball into the back of the net, yeah, you can see how Joseph Martinez is struggling right now. And you can see the whole team in terms of attacking wise is struggling right now because they're just missing that key kind of creative players that they really needed it to have a good function in terms of this attack. And I think you can also argue that maybe Miguel Almiron could potentially get MVP this season. I mean, I know Martinez probably will get it this season because of the record-breaking year, but what Almiron has done for this team and how he's just completely pulling the string of this team, and he is the reason why this offense actually is very efficient and, well, not even efficient, but probably the best attack we have ever seen in MLS. It's all because of Miguel Almiron, and it's clear that they're just missing them very badly right now. And they better hope that he'll be back in full fitness heading into the playoffs because they really needed him. And as for Chicago, well, you know, if you're a Fire fan, I don't think you will be very disappointed about this game because you did give a kind of a good fight, albeit they didn't really create a lot of chance besides the Delu goal. And I think some Fire fan will be very frustrated the fact that they actually did not get a penalty right around, I think it was either the second half or the first half, but basically Leandro Gonzalez Perez basically handballed it into the box. He basically extended his arm as the cross was coming in and the ball hits his arm, and I have no clue how in the world that is not a penalty, and they didn't even look at VAR for it. So you've already seen one example of good use of VAR, and you now see another example of how not to use VAR, which is also kind of once again brings me up to this point of how VAR in this league needs to be fixed next season. It's too inconsistent in terms of the way it's been used and in terms of the way when it's not being used. But talk about the other game with the Red Bulls. Now, this game also involved VAR, and this game also involved VAR in kind of what people thought at first was a bad way to do it, because basically there was a foul right around the 64th minute when the ball was delivered in the box, and then it accidentally hit Bodoria's hand. Well, actually it didn't accidentally. He basically swatted that ball away with his hand, and they didn't actually review that play until 3 minutes later, and the Union fan were absolutely fuming the fact that it took them so long to look at that play to see that was actually a handball. And in some sense, it's kind of very similar to what happened to the Quakes versus Atlanta game, where it took so long for them to go all the way back to see that Eriksson kind of handball in the box and said that's a penalty. But I think the difference between that incident to this one is because right when the ball was cleared away, there was actually two Union player that was down in the box, and the referee, of course, had to like go to him and trying to take care of them just to make sure that they didn't suffer some serious injury. And because that injury kind of took a couple of minutes, when that injury was finally over, the ref then decided that it was time to go back to VAR, and that I think is the correct way to implement VAR. And as much as Union fan will hate the fact that that shouldn't be the way to use it in terms of them have to go all the way back, yeah, that's because the ball was never in play after two of your own player was down in the box for a couple of minutes. But either way, Kaku, of course, puts away the penalty, and, you know, the Red Bulls, like Atlanta, did not play very well. And unlike Atlanta, they didn't really create a lot of chance in this game either. So it was kind of an old-fashioned grind-out victory for the Red Bulls. And at this point, you know, the Red Bulls, they don't care if they play ugly or play pretty. As long as they get the 3 points, then they, of course, will be very happy about that. And I think heading into the final day, they play against Orlando City, which I'm assuming that's an automatic win for the Red Bulls. I mean, the Red Bulls are not like Columbus, where just an ill-revised kind of defense giving up 2 penalties for no reason. This Red Bull team is just really solid, and I think they, of course, will win against Orlando City, which, of course, will bring us to the fact that whether or not if Atlanta can match the Red Bulls win on decision day when they play against TFC. And believe it or not, that game is going to be away at BMO Field, and you know that TFC fan would not want to see Atlanta to break the record. I mean, I know the Red Bulls will probably break the record that TFC currently holds, but certainly Atlanta fans or TFC fan, the last thing they want to see this season is seeing another team break their points record that they set last season, which I think it's at 69 points. But yeah, now talking about the Western Conference, and we'll start with the top of the table clash and probably the biggest and the most marquee matchup of this week. FC Dallas, of course, losing 3-0 to Sporting KC. Sporting KC free goal scorer in this game was Sharawi in the 45th, Espinoza in the 64th, and Johnny Russo in the 87th minute. Forgot to also put a penalty right there, which I'm going to do right now. But both teams actually missed a penalty in this game, and I'll tell you what, that penalty save from Jesse Gonzalez back in the early part of the first half was just spectacular kind of penalty save. I mean, the way that Ilie just basically hit that one to the left, you would think that that one is going to be into the back of the net. You wouldn't think that no goalkeeper in the world would have saved that kind of low drive shot. But Jesse Gonzalez just go full stretch to save that ball to preserve that 0-0 lead. And yeah, it looked like that they were gonna potentially preserve that 0-0 lead heading into halftime, but unfortunately Sharawi scored a goal right before halftime, and like I said, Espinoza scored in the 64th and then Russo in the 87th minute. And also they had a chance to get the equalizer in the second half, but Tim Melia of course came up big to save a penalty. And overall, when you watch this game, both teams actually had some decent opportunity to put the ball into the back of the net. I mean, it was kind of a very even game. I mean, the scoreline really doesn't indicate how competitive this match is, and it's kind of expected that this is a competitive match, because when you have two of the best team in the Western Conference square off, you're obviously going to get some firework. And it was just, this is kind of a game where it's just one team able to finish those chances, which is Sporting KC, and one team just did not take their chances, which is FC Dallas. And I think for FC Dallas, I've been kind of a little bit generous in terms of FC Dallas, and I've been giving them a lot of credit in terms of what they've done this season. I know a lot of people always talk about how they don't really have a true goal scorer, and that they always somehow get lucked out by having someone on their team to potentially score those goals. But at the same time, what I call that is that they always find a way to score a goal. Like, it's just, it feels like it's so efficient with so many of those players that you wouldn't think that are goal scorer on this team, and probably are the players that you wouldn't think would be performing very well for this team. But yet somehow, in some way, every single game, this team always find a guy that will score a goal, whether it's Mascara or Urruti or Coman, or not Coman actually, I don't know why I said Coman there, or Barrios, or Ziegler. Oh, and by the way, Ziegler was the one that missed the penalties that could have got the equalizer for FC Dallas. But they always find a way to score a goal. Now, recently, they have had a little bit of trouble in terms of finding a way to score a goal, and I think this game was one of the reasons why they recently started to kind of now struggle to find someone that will eventually score a goal for them. And I wonder, will that really affect them heading into the playoffs? Because it's one thing that for majority part of the season, you always find a way to score a goal. You always find someone to score the goal. But it's another that recently you have not kind of done that. And that is a kind of a scary thing for FC Dallas fans to think about. And keep in mind, FC Dallas right now, they're sitting in the third spot. They are tied with LAFC on points, but LAFC, of course, owned the tiebreaker because of goal differential. So, yeah, FC Dallas could be having a sticky situation where they could be heading into the playoffs where it looked like for sure they were going to get the first round bye, but now they have to play a knockout game. I mean, the Western Conference, the top four is just so tight right now. It's literally separated by just 4 points right now between first and fourth. But moving on into a match that was very similar to this one and also have the similar scoreline. Portland winning 3-0 against RSL. Mabiela, Chara, and Blanco with the goal. And like I said, I thought this game was pretty even between both teams. RSL had some chances of their own. Portland had some chances of their own also. But at the end of the day, one team was able to put their chances away and one team didn't. And in this case, it was Portland that was able to put those chances away and RSL weren't able to do that. And for RSL, this is probably what they fear the most heading into decision day, which is that they are going to have a lot of uncertainty. I mean, certainly if they would have won this game against Portland, they wouldn't have that uncertainty heading into decision day, but now they lost to Portland. And by the way, both times that they have lost to Portland, the aggregate score was 7-1 between Portland and RSL. I mean, when you look at both of these games, it definitely does not look like a 7-1 kind of aggregate score. It looked like at times it was kind of even, and in this game, the Portland goalkeeper, which I believe was Steve Clark, who I can't believe he is still a goalkeeper of this team, because I thought for sure that he was ousted in terms of that goalkeeper position, but I'm guessing their starting goalkeeper probably is injured and all. But he had a heck of a game in this one, making some really big save. But if you're RSL now, you are heading into decision day with a lot of uncertainty, because you not only are not playing on decision day, because you're the only team in the league not playing on the last weekend of the season, but now you got to pray that the Dynamo does not lose to the Galaxy, because if the Galaxy does win, then RSL is done. They're out of the playoffs. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure every RSL fan next week is going to be a Dynamo fan, and they are going to pray that they somehow will hope that the Galaxy, of course, will slip up and them somehow sneak into the playoffs. And even, I think, if they sneak into the playoffs, I really don't know if they're actually going to do much. I mean, RSL this season has been just so bad on the road, and I'm pretty sure for sure they're going to go on the road for their first game. They are going to face a team that is going to be even tougher than Portland, and yeah, if that, of course, is the case, then yeah, I really don't see what RSL is going to do in the playoffs. So it's almost as if even if RSL does make the playoffs, it's pretty clear that they're not going to do anything heading into the playoffs. But yeah, moving on into these last couple of games. And speaking of the Galaxy, they of course won 3-1 against the Loons. And this was the game that I forgot to mention in the preview, and I'm now mentioning it in the review. So in this game, Zlatan, Ola Kamara, and Alessandrini scoring the goal. By the way, it was a wonderful one-time kind of volley finish from Alessandrini. I mean, the way that he hit that volley was just absolutely pinpoint. Angelo Rodriguez with the consolation for Minnesota. And yeah, the Galaxy, they got their job done. And certainly, this was a game that Galaxy fan will be very happy coming out of this one, and I'm pretty sure a lot of Galaxy players will be very proud coming out of this game, because this was a tricky one. They play against a Minnesota team that, although last week they lost to Colorado and they weren't very good, they were playing in front of 50,000 people, and they were playing in the ceremonial finale for Minnesota at TCF Bank Stadium, and it's definitely not. I thought it was definitely not going to be easy for them, considering the fact that Minnesota is going to really want to impress their 50,000 fans that showed up to watch the game, but the Galaxy were not phased out with that, and instead they did a very good job in that game. And besides the fact that this goal that they concede from Rodriguez, which is just a silly mistake from the Galaxy back line, they have looked much better in terms of their back line. And now that they look much better in terms of the back line and the attack is continuing to score goals like they've been doing throughout the season, who knows that maybe this Galaxy team is a dangerous team heading into the playoffs. I mean, maybe some people are kind of underrating them a little bit. But we'll see. We'll see what they'll do once they head into the playoffs. But meanwhile, speaking of LA Galaxy, let's talk about their neighbor, LAFC. And LAFC, unbelievable. Another game, another blown leads. And this is just incredible. How in the world did they not able to win against the Whitecaps? So LAFC were 2-0 up. Rossi with a brace in the first 15 minutes, and it looked like everything was going well for them. Bank of California Stadium was rocking. Will Ferrell was in the 3-2-5-2 trying to hype up the crowd, and everything was going well in downtown LA on a Sunday afternoon. And then all of a sudden, they concede a penalty to Jordi Reyna after Alphonso Davies completely destroyed that LAFC defense. And then they got caught in a sucker punch by Jordan Much scoring an absolute banging goal to get the equalizer for Vancouver. And by the way, Vancouver coming into this game, they were technically already out of the playoffs, and I of course will be making a moving forward series for the Whitecaps tomorrow. But for LAFC, this season, it feels like they had so many opportunity where they can potentially get that top spot, or maybe get in a good position to clinch tops, or not clinch top spot, but clinch the first two spot in the playoffs, which are the first round bye spot. And they're technically still in that second place and clinch that last, well, not clinch that last spot. But yeah, moving on. And speaking of the LA Galaxy, their neighbor, LAFC. So LAFC was 2-0 up in this game. Rossi, of course, with the brace early in this game. And it looked like LAFC was going to be cruising to another 3 points. Bank of California Stadium were absolutely rocking. Even Will Ferrell was having a party with the 3-2-5-2 and just hyping up the crowd. And it looked like everything is going to go well. LAFC is going to tie Sporting KC in that top spot. And heading into the final weekend, we're going to have a showdown between the first and second team and who can potentially claim top spot. But instead, just 7 minutes later, they concede a penalty after Alphonso Davies absolutely destroyed that LAFC defense, and eventually he was brought down in the box. Jordi Reyna, of course, scoring the penalty in the 22nd minute. And again, I forgot to put the PK there next to his name. And then Jordan Much scored a goal in the second half, scoring absolute sucker punch kind of banger to made it 2-2. And yeah, LAFC, another game, another blown lead, and another blown opportunity to potentially get into first spot. How many times this season we have seen LAFC have a chance to potentially go top spot and have a chance to get to that second spot to clinch that first round bye, and yet they still cannot do it. Now, technically, LAFC is still in second. They're currently tied with FC Dallas on goal differential. But you could say that they probably should be at 60 points right now, and that they should be tying with Sporting KC in terms of the points, and they have a chance to go top in that showdown next week between them and Sporting KC on decision day. But instead, they blow the lead in this game. And probably for the 1 million time, it just seemed like whenever this team gets to a comfortable spot, they just kind of took their foot off the gas. And we have seen it a couple of times this season. We've seen it a couple of times in El Tráfico. Well, actually, we didn't see it a couple of times. We've seen it every time in El Tráfico. And it's happening again with Vancouver, where they just completely took their foot off the gas, thinking the game is over after just 15 minutes, and they were paid for thinking of that. And with this draw, now LAFC will have to head to Sporting KC, where, you know, if they can get a win over Sporting KC, I believe they would leapfrog them, and they will get that top spot. So they still have a chance to get that top spot. But when you look at that game, and you know that that game is away at Children Mercy Park Stadium, and the fact that Sporting KC just do not lose at home, yeah, the odds of LAFC going on the road, and just after suffering a very disappointing result heading into that game against Sporting KC, I don't think there's a lot of good odds that LAFC can actually get a win. But, you know, one thing I think LAFC could kind of be looking forward to, and kind of a consolation prize of what felt like 2-point drop more than just 1 point gain, is that now they are the best expansion side in history. With 58 points, they surpassed Atlanta United of last season. And yeah, I guess that's something that they can cheer about, although I'm pretty sure if you talk to any LAFC fan, they are now very disappointed that they dropped 2 points against Vancouver. And as for Vancouver, they are now officially out of the playoffs because they didn't get a win. And even if they did get a win, they would have been kind of out of the playoffs because of the whole goal differential situation. And I will make a moving forward series for the Whitecaps coming into tomorrow. But yeah, now let's talk about the last game of this match week. I know this has been a very long video because there's been so much I want to talk about. But to just kind of talk about this game and try to make it quick, basically, this was a game of set pieces, and 4 of the 5 goals in this game were headed goals, and both teams' set piece defense were absolutely garbage. I mean, Chad Marshall, of course, started the set piece party in the 12th minute, or not the 12th minute, but the 26th minute, and then Gustav Svensson continued that set piece party in the 50th minute. Both times, these players were having good looks at goal and having a free header in the box. And then Garcia, of course, scoring the goal in the 63rd minute. And this is Kevin Garcia, not Garcia, who of course, I don't think he actually started in this game, but he, of course, scored his first goal with none other than a header. And then Ruidiaz scored in the 87th minute to pretty much seal the win for Seattle. And this was actually the only goal that was not scored from a header. And then Manotas, of course, did try to make things interesting for Houston, but ultimately Seattle able to walk out of BBVA Compass Stadium with all 3 points. And certainly for Seattle, they can still have a chance to potentially jump a couple of teams heading into decision day. And keep in mind, out of all the teams that have the easiest matchup, you could argue Seattle probably have the easiest matchup. Well, actually, to be fair, FC Dallas against Colorado next week, that's also kind of an easier matchup. But, you know, Seattle having the Quakes at home, which should be an automatic 3 points for them. The Sounders will have a chance to maybe get a first round bye because they're still in range to potentially get that. And I know of all these teams that is in that logjam between first and fourth, the last team that they want to see to have a first round bye is Seattle. And I'm pretty sure everybody do not want to see Seattle in that first round bye. But yeah, either way, guys, that is pretty much it for this video. And again, I do apologize the fact that this is a long video, but that's what happened when you have all these games to talk about. And I bet next week's review video is going to be even longer because it's decision day and I have to spend at least 5 minutes talk about every game. But either way, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button, and yeah, I will see you guys next time.